Du, ich, dieses Video, das ist die richtige Entscheidung gewesen. Aber wenn du es geguckt hast, dann schau doch mal bei Meinungsmacher vorbei. Da gibt es jeden Tag neue Informationen aus den Nachrichten und aller Welt mit politischen Themen. Oder vielleicht beim zweitklassigen Reaktionskanal. Denn wir haben so viele Reaktionen, dass die halt nicht auf den Hauptkanal passen. Also guck da gerne vorbei. Und jetzt weiter mit dem Video. Cut! Der zweite Teil ist jetzt rausgekommen und den gucken wir uns dann natürlich Free Solo direkt nochmal an. Oder gucken wir uns direkt an.
They have made millions and millions of euros. I'm going to be delivering justice to these motherfuckers.
I get told that they had posted flyers everywhere in my city. And I mean everywhere. High schools, malls.
They need to go in, even if there's a security guard, even if they're gonna be taken away. If somebody goes home walking, they will be fired.
They sent 18 people outside my door having a quote-unquote protest.
We are having war with other sites as well. Most of the CSGO gambling sites are scams.
I want to know who's really behind this thing, who's really the victims, and who's really the villain.
In our last video, we got bribed, but instead of taking it, we exposed the people who offered it. Now it's time to expose the rest of the Counter-Strike gambling industry and the influencers who promote it for millions a year. Let's start with the basics of what Counter-Strike gambling really is, though. Counter-Strike is a first-person shooter video game where you can buy cosmetic options for your guns called skins. You can get these by paying $2.50 to open a loot box. It spins like a slot machine, and you get a random skin. There's an entire economy that's grown out of their rarity, and you can sell these skins for pennies or up to tens of thousands of dollars depending on their rarity. You can then take those skins to Counter-Strike casinos where they will be accepted as currency instead of cash.
Ich finde sehr gut, dass er es nochmal erklärt, weil wir das in dem ersten Video gar nicht hatten. Und hier wird nochmal genau erklärt, wie die damit Geld machen.
They use their real-world value to turn this video game into Vegas. You can play slots, roulette, and more, all with a video game skin. Think of it like their version of poker chips.
Yeah.
And when I first began to investigate this, I thought, why don't people just use a regular casino? You know, why use Counter-Strike skins for this? Well, I decided to investigate by interviewing a bunch of people who do use Counter-Strike casinos, and I found a disturbing trend.
I've been in the gambling community in Counter-Strike for about, I'd say since 12 years old.
I started gambling on Counter-Strike when I was probably 13 years old.
13 years old.
14 years old.
I think I was 14. Started gambling on CSGO at the age of 12 and 13, pretty much right around there, by 13.
Gar nicht problematisch, Digga.
Birthday.
Yeah, most of the people I spoke to started gambling underage, and it was while they were playing the game. And this trend continues beyond the anecdotal. This YouTuber named Jeff surveyed over 9,000 players, and he found that around 70% of Counter-Strike gamblers start underage. Now, themed casinos have always had an audience, but with Counter-Strike, there is an underage gateway to all of this because all you need is $2.50 to get your first skin through Valve, and you don't even need to show ID, which is a huge part of this. Even worse, when you go from the game to the casinos, which are hosted on third-party websites, most don't ID the players either. Or if they do, it's only after you've already gambled thousands of dollars, which is a bit like if a liquor store asks for ID after you drank 10 bottles of liquor. Obviously absurd, but it's also very profitable because underage gamblers not only are new customers, they're way more likely to become gambling addicts, which is how casinos make most of their money. These days, most physical casinos have a strict ID policy at the door. This isn't because they're good people, it's because they're heavily regulated and would lose their gambling license if they knowingly allowed underage players. But Counter-Strike gambling is fundamentally different. Regulation for these casinos is almost non-existent because they're offshore in Malta, Curacao, Cyprus, and most of them are using loopholes to pretend that this isn't even gambling at all. Look, I'm not going to go into too much detail here because different casinos use different loopholes, but suffice to say, this has been going on a long time. Back in 2016, a very similar story broke in a big way about scam casinos and underage gambling problems in Counter-Strike. And
die Team Martin-Situation, wo die Leute einfach eigene Casinos hatten, in denen sie gespielt haben. Die Phantom Lord, der Phantom Lord-Fall, der ihn einfach seine gesamte Karriere gekostet hat. Also es ist wirklich alter Schwede. Zu Recht auch. Cancel Culture hat dann doch funktioniert.
And everyone was understandably enraged. Valve even got involved, had to send out cease and desist letters. Even the FTC went after influencers. But when the dust settled there weren't that many consequences. Part of the reason was because of these loopholes. In fact, the most infamous casino, CSGO Lotto, claimed not even to be a casino at all. They said they were a sweepstakes. Now, this is obviously absurd. It's not true, but none of that matters because it got them out of trouble. And so the same types of casinos have continued, just with new owners and new names. What you're left with then is an industry that is unregulated, if anything, self-regulated, which I discovered creates its own race to the bottom problem, because consumer protection in an unregulated market will literally drive away your customers. For example, remember Monarch from the last video?
Absoluter Psycho.
And his casino CSGO Empire? One of the things they do that I actually think is good is they block certain IPs where gambling is illegal. And they admit that what they're doing is gambling. Now, you can easily get around these geo restrictions with a VPN, but it's sort of an extra hurdle. Most Counter-Strike casinos don't even do this. And listen to one gambler explain why this tiny decision to just geo-block one region, the US, affected who he chose to gamble with.
So when I went onto Empire, while it's still easy to bypass it, you could just put a VPN, just takes an extra 5 minutes. CSGO Roll, I can just, once again, type it into my browser. Deposits.
Oh, you're an American.
Yes, correct. Yes.
So no VPN restriction, no geo blocking.
Yes, correct. So on Roll, 0 VPN blocking, 0 any bypassing. On Empire, there is blocking, but it truthfully is very easy to bypass.
Also warte mal, der moralische High Ground ist, dass die einen IP-Block haben? Okay, das ist ja süß.
Right, that makes sense.
Das ist ja super süß, Digga.
Most people end up going with the casino who asks them less questions, requires less from you, even if you're not illegally trying.
Oder das Ding ist halt, wenn du in einem Casino spielst, in dem du nicht spielen darfst und einen VPN benutzt, um Gewinne zu erspielen, dann kannst du ja diese Gewinne nicht auszahlen, weil du durftest ja in erster Instanz gar nicht da spielen und es gibt keine Möglichkeit für dich, das jemals auch nur im Entferntesten auszuzahlen.
Trying to gamble. You just don't want to have to put in personal information, anything like that. This all taught me that in the world of unregulated gambling, it's more complicated than just saying, okay, casinos want toddlers gambling. It's also market dynamics, right? You get a competitive edge.
Kann man sich das in Krypto auszahlen lassen? Oh, das ist ja, oh Gott, Igitt.
By not regulating. Less work, more customers, more money. Which means you can't just solve the problem by wagging your finger at bad casinos. The entire system is broken. As long as these loopholes exist, why would anyone change? In fact, some websites like Clash.gg even advertise their lack of regulation as a feature, not a bug. The CEO even on Twitter, quote, Clash just paid out its biggest one-time cash out instantly with no verification.
What? Internationale Finanzbehörden so, excuse-moi, Bro, was hast du gemacht? Der Grund, warum das natürlich kritisch ist Geldwäsche. Keine Verifikation, ein gigantischer Magnet für alle Formen von Geldwäsche. Also, damit machst du einfach, damit holst du dir einfach Leute ins Haus. Ach du Scheiße.
Couldn't be more happy with the product and reputation we are building. This guy sees it as a badge of honor to do no checks. And it is a positive reputation if you want to appeal to underage players, money launderers, or just people who want to avoid a hassle, a VPN and putting in an ID. And this is all a huge problem. But how big of a problem is it? You might wonder. After all, we're talking about video game skins. How much money could this industry really be worth?
Ja, wie viel ist es denn?
I wondered the same thing. So I asked around for how much these casinos are making and got several estimates. One owner claims he has an 8-figure business, and someone who worked for his partner claims that is true. How much does he make on Clash?
His partner, Boris, right, also known as Dogs Playing Poker, Friendly Chemist, he told me directly that it was making about $50 million a month.
$50 Millionen pro Monat.
That's a lot of money, and this roughly matches what the popular gambling Counter-Strike YouTuber, told me as well, saying he'd estimate these sites are making tens of millions monthly. And there are so many of these sites that the YouTuber Jeff estimated it all in a different way, looking at the total amount of website traffic compared to a popular online casino.
So when you bring them together, those CSGO websites bring almost double the traffic of the biggest online casino today. And this online casino declared a gross revenue of 2.
Tja, und dann fragt man sich natürlich nicht mehr, wie ein Glücksspielanbieter wie Stake in der Lage ist, ein ganzes Streaming-Plattform einfach zu finanzieren und Amazon dafür zu bezahlen. Ne? Kick ist ja einfach eine Glücksspielplattform, subventioniertes Streaming. Also das ist ja eine Streaming-Plattform, die von einem Glücksspielbetreiber betrieben wird und damit neue Glücksspielsüchtige anzuziehen. Das ist vollkommen verrückt. Und die haben ja auch keine eigene Infrastruktur und kein eigenes gar nichts. Die bezahlen Amazon dafür. Also der Konkurrent von Twitch bezahlt die Mutterfirma von Twitch dafür, dass er eine Streaming-Plattform haben kann. Ich würde jetzt nachträglich das Wort Konkurrent mal wegnehmen, ne?
2.6 billion in 2022. Now, that doesn't mean the CSGO websites are grossing more, but it's a great element to put things in perspective.
So even though it's tough getting an exact number since these casinos might overestimate or underestimate for many reasons, either way, it's clear these businesses are making huge amounts of money. And there's many of these casinos. We've just focused on a few in our videos, but there's so many more of these websites, each potentially making millions a month. And no one's going to change their behavior until they're incentivized to by regulation across the board.
Was zusätzlich noch extrem schlimm ist, ich habe ja vor einigen Monaten wieder im Rattenloch Counter-Strike rumgedriftet, ne, um ein bisschen wieder zu zocken und ein bisschen hochzuklimmen. Und ich gucke dann in meiner Freizeit auf Basis der Interessen dann eben auch Counter-Strike-Tipps und Tricks YouTube-Videos, um sich einfach mit den neuen Metas und neuen Maps und so ein bisschen auseinanderzusetzen. Ne? Ich gucke mir Sachen halt einfach an. Oder ich habe, glaube ich, kein einziges Video konsumieren können, ohne dass ein Glücksspielsponsor drin war. Es ist überall. In jedem Video, ob es nun ein Highlight-Video ist von irgendeinem krassen Spieler, ob es ein Tipps-Video ist von jemandem, das ist überall. In jedem Video. Ich habe kein Video gefunden, wo nicht. Das ist so crazy. Also das ist so verrückt, Digga. Du sitzt da und denkst dir nur so, wie soll ich mir das noch reinziehen, ne? Wie soll ich mir das reinziehen? Da ist nur noch Gambling-Content. Und selbst wenn du es versuchst zu vermeiden, dann vermeidest du halt Inhalte. Du musst ganze Inhalte.
Until then, less regulation will always mean a wider customer base, even if some of those customers are underage. The irony here being, the biggest voice of change.
Such dir was anderes, irgendeinen anderen Shooter. Marvel Rivals habe ich Bock. Ich bin gerade am Recherchieren bezüglich Marvel Rivals. Sieht richtig fett aus.
So far really has been Monarch. From the last video, you guys know I'm no fan of this guy's methods. But I'll be honest, there's large parts of his public arguments that are hard to argue with. He claims to understand the underage problem because that's how he started as well.
How I got into gambling myself was when I was 13 and I was playing RuneScape, and how the dual arena was like a gateway drug for me. That's how gambling started for me, and that's where it went into third-party sites. I'm just disgusted about this whole loop. I think that the whole case system on Steam is pretty horrible. The way.
Alter, ich ganz ehrlich, ne? Wenn er das sagen würde, während er nicht ein Casino-Besitzer wäre, ist vollkommen wahnsinnig. Das ist vollkommen wahnsinnig. Der Typ ist Casino-Besitzer und macht damit Millionen und redet davon, wie schrecklich das ist. Was redest du, Digga?
How there is no KYC. It's such a powerful tool.
KYC ist Know Your Customer. Das ist eine Verifizierung.
For getting children and even adults. I think even adults, they have a gambling problem. It's not only it's not a age-exclusive thing. It's just a machine that makes people gamble. Imagine there's a kid who just plays CSGO and they open one box. Pretty innocent. They get their mom's credit card. They spend €2 to open a box. Okay, then they open a second box, third box, fourth box, and so on. And soon they see their favorite influencer playing on some third-party case-opening site.
Ich kenne das leider auch von Wargaming und World of Tanks und World of Warships. Wollte es nur mal erwähnen. Nee. Also, nee. Kannst du nicht. Weil es gibt keinen dritten Markt, wo man die Skins raustraden kann und darauf gambeln kann. Lootboxen sind gängige Praxis. Also Lootboxen kriegst du auch nicht zurückgedreht, weil das Ding mit Lootboxen ist wie eine Pest, das ist überall. Also es ist wirklich überall. Jedes Spiel, das neu rauskommt, aber du hast keine Mechanik, die im Hintergrund dein Geld, deine Items rausziehen kann, damit du sie für echt Geld tauschen kannst. Es gibt vielleicht Möglichkeiten, Accounts zu verkaufen oder zu kaufen. Das glaube ich. Dass es sowas gibt. Keine Ahnung, wo man danach sucht, aber bestimmt gibt es sowas. Aber dieser Auswuchs von diesem schon sehr, sehr fragwürdigen Lootbox-System hin zu, ich darf das extrahieren und damit dann ein unreguliertes Casino betreiben. Oder holy shit.
And this is where it's like switching from weed straight to, I don't know, amphetamine or something. And they just go deeper and deeper into this rabbit hole and soon they are addicted. And the next thing you know...
Casino-Influencer sagen immer das Gleiche. Wir wissen, dass es schlecht ist. Wir bieten ja auch Hilfe an oder blocken Spieler, wenn sie es wollen. Ja, es ist halt Schwachsinn. Casino-Influencer haben nicht die Möglichkeit, sich bei sowas rauszureden. Das sind halt einfach... Die werden damit reich und die werden damit reich, indem sie Leute dazu verleiten, ihre Existenz aufs Spiel zu setzen im Worst-Case-Szenario, ja. Sie in die Sucht zu treiben und eventuell die gesamte Existenz zu... Also das ist es, also es gibt da keine. Ich erinnere mich noch sehr, sehr gut an diese ganzen Hurensöhne, die dann irgendwie so eine Einblendung gemacht haben von wegen, Achtung, Glücksspiel ist schlecht. Ja, deine Mutter, Digga. Wie Glücksspiel ist schlecht. Das ist halt ein moralischer Ansatz, der halt dann von kompletten Tools, also wirklich, du musst halt wirklich verrottet sein im Kopf. Du musst ein verrotteter kleiner Wicht sein im Kopf, um das zu sehen und zu sagen, naja, aber er sagt uns zumindest, Alter, halt deine Fresse, Digga. Halt doch deine Fresse und verpiss dich wieder. Es ist wirklich verrottet bis tief aufs Mark.
You know, when they want to stop gambling, it's easy to just close these websites. But what happens when you go on social media? You go on YouTube, Instagram, Twitch, TikTok, any platform.
Ja, es ist crazy. Es ist überall.
You get gambling ads everywhere. The algorithm starts feeding you. It's like, imagine you are addicted.
Ich kann sagen, ey, ganz ehrlich, ich habe vor wenigen Monaten erst Counter-Strike gespielt, in diesem Stream. Wir haben versucht, wieder zu climben. Und es lief eigentlich ganz gut und ich habe versucht, meine Mechanics wieder hinzukriegen. Aber mit jedem Video, das ich versucht habe das ich konsumiert habe, in jedem Video war eine Glücksspiel-Advertisement. In jedem. Das ist einfach in jedem Video. Und ich suche natürlich auch einfach nur nach Tipps und Tricks. Du hast die Turniere geguckt, es ist überall Gambling. Du hast die Content Creator geguckt, es ist überall Gambling. Wenn nicht Gambling da ist, dann ist irgendeine Webseite, bei der man Skins kaufen kann, die ihre Skins aus Gambling-Seiten bezieht. Du hast immer mit irgendeiner Scheiße zu tun. Und das ist so crazy.
Heroin. And then everywhere you go, you just see like heroin here.
Ja, das ist wirklich krank.
Look, your hero is taking heroin.
So, we have to separate these two things out. Yes, this guy's methods are terrible, but I'll admit, it's nice to see a casino owner talking honestly about their industry and admitting that what it is gambling and not some kind of sweepstakes. But even if Monarch says he wants to change, without the actual power of a regulator, he just ends up having to harass people, threaten people, which isn't going to get him anywhere. Not only that, he's no saint either. His own website doesn't ID people right away. According to CSGO's Empire's terms, they only require you to verify your age if you want to withdraw more than 2,000 coins in crypto or deposit substantial amounts of money. If you withdraw via skins, there is no limit. So even the guy who claims he started underage gambling, he understands the gateway drug that skin betting websites act as, even he refuses to fully ID customers because he knows he'd go out of business.
I'm really committed to, I want to make it stricter and stricter. Like, you can't jump to the deep end just like immediately on one day. That would make us go out of business. But really my end goal is I want to do full-blown KYC before anybody deposits. I want to make it as clean as possible.
This, more than anything, shows the limit to the let's self-regulate idea, right? Even the biggest critic of underage gambling can't bring himself to actually ID his customers up front.
KYC ist Know Your Customers. Das ist so eine Identifikation.
Because his competitors won't do it, and he says it would ruin his business. So maybe the solution isn't with the casinos at all. Maybe it's a good time to talk about the influencer.
Oh, let's go. Rein in das Rattenloch der Influencer. Rein in das Rattenloch.
Who promote it instead. Because when I learned and asked about people who got into this type of gambling, I wondered, how did they get into it in the first place? Who did they hear about it from? And one thing kept popping up.
One of the primary ways I actually learned was through YouTube. It popped up in my recommended page because I was a big fan of Counter-Strike. I'd play it, in my free time. Some gambling videos popped up and I thought, hey,
Streamers kind of exposed me to that space first.
I saw it online. I saw a bunch of these YouTubers playing it.
Found out CSGO gambling just pretty much through watching people on Twitch and YouTube. Juicy was one of them. I actually remember very vividly. He was this guy that would do all these case openings on different websites and such. He was very much affiliated with them. He had codes and all of these things.
I've been surrounded by Syndicate and like FaZe Clan, for example.
I watched my favorite YouTubers.
Right. YouTubers and Streamers, of course, are going to be one of the...
Absoluter Tunnel dahin, ne? Also ich würde sagen, wenn du im Internet unterwegs gewesen bist als Jugendlicher, da hast du zu 90% darüber durch Influencer, YouTuber, Streamer mitbekommen.
Main advertising vectors.
Yeah.
It's been that way since 2016. Influencers are the main lifeblood of these casinos. Fast forward 8 years later,
Immer noch.
It's just different influencers, different casinos making the money than before. But unlike casinos, who we know intuitively are blood-sucking leeches on society, influencers, by contrast, they're well, we expect more from them. We don't get it, but we expect more. So I wanted to confront 3 different influencers who do this gambling streaming stuff of different sizes and get their opinions on why they promote this stuff and how they can possibly justify it.
I don't think people should gamble, honestly, on the sites. They shouldn't gamble at all. But I enjoy doing it, so it's what I do. If that makes any sense, I don't know.
Nein, macht's nicht, du Sohn, Digga.
No. That part of it makes sense. That the part where you want to do it so you continue to do it, that makes sense. But let's say I'm like, I don't think smoking's good for you, but I like smoking. It makes sense that I would smoke. It doesn't make sense that I would go promote it to get people to smoke.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand that perspective too.
Da muss man auch mal an die Eltern denken, Digga. Wenn die kleinen Bubs zu Hause sitzen, Digga, und den Fernseher um 23 Uhr anhaben, dann kann ich da auch nichts machen, Digga.
And it's a very good argument, and it's like you can't really argue against it, right? It's not a good thing, but it's something that I still enjoy doing, and so I'm going to continue to do it.
Is it just too much money? That's an acceptable answer. It's just too much money to turn down.
I'd say in the beginning it probably was too much money. At this point, it's not about the money for me. It's just I really enjoy doing it.
Well, in the videos, I don't sugarcoat. I don't try to convince people that winning or gambling is a way or a solid option to flip a quick buck. Even in my wins, I preface that this is not a sustainable thing. So it's not something that I necessarily. I don't know. You can watch the videos and decide for yourself if it feels like promotion, but that.
Oder if it feels like promotion, what the fuck are you talking about?
That's how I reason it to myself. I don't even, use the rewards. I don't advertise it at all. So.
Alter, wirklich, du musst dich wirklich, also Parasiten einfach, wirklich, alles Parasiten.
I don't, the rewards thing, it's more of like I said, I don't advertise it. So.
I don't advertise it. Meanwhile, advertise it. Alter, was zur Hölle?
I don't feel
guilty. But you do advertise. You get paid to advertise it, right?
Not the reward system. No, I don't mention the rewards.
No. I'm saying CS:GO Roll.
Yes.
We're talking about the gambling side.
Yes.
We both know it's not going to be good for people, and then you're kind of saying, "Well, I don't really promote it. I don't really advertise it." But in a way, if you didn't promote or advertise it, they wouldn't pay you millions of dollars.
Yeah, I watched your Trainwrecks video and you said the same thing. You're like the less dirtier of the dirt bags. So I guess I would call myself that. And ultimately, if you watch the video, you can...
Dinge, die du erzählen musst, um anderen klarzumachen, dass du in irgendeiner Form dich nicht übergeben musst, wenn du dein eigenes Spiegelbild erkennst, ist wirklich, also das ist so eine Gymnastikarbeit da, Alter, das ist wirklich crazy.
Decide, like, how less dirty is he really? But yeah, that's my answer.
You know, most people are going to, unfortunately, gamble with or without certain streamers, right? Obviously, it's intended to be like a McDonald's ad. You see a McDonald's ad, you see a Big Mac, you're going to go, you know, I'm craving a Big Mac. So it's the same concept.
You're saying like, oh, I'm just like kind of promoting McDonald's, whatever.
No, it's not. It's not like promoting McDonald's. Let's be honest. Gambling.
Also es ist schon irgendwie, als würde man McDonald's promoten und dann sagen die Leute, ja, ich hätte Bock auf McDonald's. Und dann sagt er, okay, also denkst du, es ist so ein bisschen wie McDonald's promoten? Nee, eigentlich nicht. Hä? Digga, bist du dumm? Hast du nicht gerade gesagt, das ist genau das? Hallo?
Is a terrible addiction. My closest friend has a very, very bad gambling addiction. He'll get paid on, let's say, a Tuesday, and by Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, his whole paycheck is gone for 2 weeks, and then he has no money and no.
Oh mein Gott, Alter. Und dann bist du einfach ein Promoter dafür? Das ist ja ganz schön krass.
No matter what I do to intervene to help that individual try to hold his money, to help him sit there and self-exclude, he finds ways because it's an addiction. It's just as bad as any other drug because of that dopamine rush.
Yeah, the answers were part admissions, part rationalizations. They all knew gambling was bad, but they'd stopped short of actually doing something about it because they were making money from it, even when they knew people whose own lives were hurt by it. So if you know the harm firsthand, you've seen it in your own life, how do you justify peddling that drug, as you call it?
It's going to happen, in my opinion, right? And like, there is...
Es wird so oder so passieren, dann kann ich wenigstens davon profitieren, Alter. Go fuck yourself so sehr.
No justification. Can I say, like, I'm a drug dealer? Sure, you could, you know, you're going to label... Certain streamers are going to be labeled as a drug dealer, in essence. And that's okay, I guess, if people are going to view it that way. I mean, I want to know how you view it. How I feel?
Because you said it was kind of like a drug. So I want.
It is a drug. I mean, it hits the dopamine levels. Hell, I get hit with dopamine levels if I hit big. It's yeah, you know, and then that becomes a YouTube trick. I feel bad. I do. Right? I hate to hear when people say I've lost money. I hate it, dude. I really it crushes me because some people legit do it because they're bored and then they lose everything they have. And it is a terrible feeling to hear that, right?
Not to question their sincerity, but I've heard all of them say that they hate when people get addicted. They don't want to see anyone hurt, but they refuse to stop even though they know casinos are run on addicts. Fun fact, Clash.gg, who earlier we had their CEO admitting he was proud of not IDing players, also admitted that the majority of their revenue comes from a tiny fraction of their most...
Less than 1% of Clash accounts make up for 80% of our revenue. Holy shit.
Addicted players. Quote, less than 1% of Clash accounts make up 80% of our revenue. It's just an admission from their founder. It's an open secret. So these influencers can empathize about how horrible addiction is, but they know that's where their paycheck comes from. The CEO of Clash has a profile on Twitter that says, never gamble, the house always wins. But ironically, his house is probably from people gambling. The fact of the matter is that these people say with their mouth, I feel terrible, I feel bad. But when it comes to actually changing, they never do. Even when they directly scam people, they will still find a way to rationalize it. And this next part is pretty dark. But for a moment, we're going to have to go back for a second to the PGL Major Tournament and talk about the thing I was originally offered a bounty to investigate. A specific casino that is owned by the same group as CSGO Roll, but this one is called Hype Drop. It's owned by Monarch's arch nemesis. Hype Drop was a casino where instead of gambling Counter-Strike skins, you could gamble real-world items, like real-world loot boxes. For example, you could pay for a real loot box that would get you anything from like a $10 gift card to a Lamborghini, for example.
Oh, come on.
It's just gambling with physical items. But the real secret sauce of this website was a loyalty program called the Daily Cases, where the more you spent, the higher level you got, the more you'd get these daily cases, which essentially were free money. Every single day, you could go on their website and open these daily cases, and theoretically, you'd get free stuff, free money. Which, if that sounds unsustainable, it is. It was all part of a scheme, it turns out, to make the Danish government believe that Hypedrop was not actually gambling. I received a letter Hypedrop gave to the Danish regulator arguing players could not lose money on their site because over time, the daily cases paid back all the losses over roughly 3 years. This is one of those loopholes we talked about where they're going to argue they're not actually gambling because you can't lose. Now, of course, I asked Hypedrop about this, and initially they denied ever sending this letter. Eventually, I showed them that I had their document, and they finally confessed, saying
Jesus Christ.
They did do it on one occasion, but denied trying to pass it off as an investment. They then quickly scurry away saying, "This is our last comment." I bet it is, because they got caught making bad faith arguments to the Danish government. This type of loophole is why in their promotional material, Hypedrop said things like, "Yes, you'll always make at least your money back," and quote, "We offer return on what you invest through our daily reward system," and quote, "It's a win-win situation every time." Now, it only takes a few moments to realize that offering jackpots and money back to losers isn't gonna work. It has to be a scam, which is why many people like Monarch called this thing an unsustainable Ponzi scheme. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but he's right. On March 27th, 2024, Killian, the owner, announced that he was shutting down the site, effectively rug pulling his customers, who were all relying on these daily cases to make their losses back.
Jesus Christ.
This is part of what Monarch's paid goons were yelling about at the PGL majors. By removing their daily cases, Hypedrop, in my opinion, stole from their users and effectively revealed their legal loophole to be a lie. Now, with that all understood, let's circle back to this guy, Juicy, a gambling streamer who we heard from earlier. He was easily one of the biggest promoters of Hypedrop, and I wanted to know, given that he has widely promoted a scam, what was he gonna do to make things right? So let's talk about Hypedrop at this point. This has been kind of what precipitated the PGL majors, according to Monarch. He says, "I had to protest Hypedrop. It was a Ponzi scheme that collapsed, and CSGO rolls next." Now, when I was looking up Hypedrop, you were one of the people who was promoting it, like one of the bigger YouTubers I saw, maybe the biggest. What's your take on promoting this stuff? Where's your ethical line for what you will take, what you won't take on?
Yeah. So to my understanding, I had never worked with a gambling site that had rewards that function like a Ponzi scheme, you know? So when I was playing on it, I'm not promoting the rewards, you know? I'm not like, this is the most rewarding IRL gambling site. So I was just playing with the product itself.
Also jegliche Form von Accountability, ne? Jegliche Form von Verantwortung ist einfach nicht da. Ist einfach nicht da. Ich habe ja das nicht so gemacht. Digga, go f*** yourself. Ich hoffe, du erstickst an deiner Gambling Money, Bro. Das ist so erbärmlich. Ist das erbärmlich, Mann.
And, you know, making content around that. So with,
das ist so erbärmlich, Mann.
Obviously, it's really f***ing annoying and bullshit when the rewards get, first off, cut down, and then second off, now there is no reward offering and the site's going away. Like, I'm obviously very upset, not just for my own intent, but also mainly for the people who, especially if people put money into Hypedrop, thinking of it like a good monetary investment versus like,
oh mein Gott! Hat er gerade das Wort Investment gesagt?
You know, I'm pretty sure from my understanding that wasn't like a advertised thing. At least they weren't advertising. They weren't saying, hey, you got to tell them about this great investment option. I think that was more of a legal loophole that they were, you know, trying to operate.
He's just lying about some of this. He says he didn't advertise his daily cases, but I think he didn't think I'd watch his videos because he definitely did.
Daily reminder, claim your daily cases. They're free monies. Code JUICY will get you 3 free cases, so might as well. I mean, my daily cases used to pay a filthy amount of money. It was a full-time income just claiming them. Claim this
Motherfucker, Alter.
every day, dude, and we're making a full-time salary every month.
Yeah.
Fucking Ratte, Alter.
He calls the daily cases basically a full-time salary. But I thought surely after seeing that Hype Drop scammed people, he would cancel his sponsorship with the same company. Like, it's the sister casino CSGO Roll, right? He has to stop that now that he's scammed his audience. He didn't cancel it, right? So let me ask you, does that mean you're no longer going to work with CSGO Roll since they're run by the same people?
Well, I've already promoted the site, and I already have fans who use the site. And I don't think the reward offering there is going to change. But yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that they did that.
I think you can see the logic of no one thought Hype Drop was going to rug people from these cases, these daily rewards. And if you are regretful, wouldn't that turn into some kind of action on your part to like change who you're working with?
Yeah. I understand that completely, but I feel like Counter-Strike sites aren't there to stay forever in the first place. I don't think anyone's expecting them to stay forever, and there really isn't many great options. So yeah, maybe it's f***ed up of me that I continue to do so, absolutely, but it really is one of the better options on the market right now.
Wirklich null geskillt in Moral. Wirklich Integrität, Charakter auf null. Also irgendwie in seinem Leben, als er angefangen hat mit dieser Gambling, hat er ein einzigartiges Item bekommen, das seine Charisma-Werte auf null fahren lässt. Einfach. Na, wirklich. Also, das ist so würdelos. Keine Ahnung, wie man da mit sich leben kann, Alter. Wahrscheinlich kann man nur so mit sich leben. Nur so. Wenn du dir das eingestehen würdest, was du da tust, wahrscheinlich würdest du so nicht mit dir leben können.
Now, and there's a ton of dog shit on the market, so, yeah.
And there it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely, he doesn't want to change. Absolutely, he's not going to stop what he's doing. At the end of the day, past all the rationalizations, that's what it comes down to. It doesn't matter what you show them, what you prove to them. They're making too much money.
Ja, absolut wahr.
And that is the part that I was struggling to like really get from these people, is they would always say like, I do it for the love of gambling, man. I would do it if nobody paid me. Of course, they always do it getting paid. But this is the single biggest cope of gambling streamers. In fact, even Grim told me this, who we spoke to earlier about getting harassed. Luckily for me, though, his tax records are public, so I knew that he was actually making a few $1 million a year and had a few million reasons to lie about why he was doing what he did. So I decided to ask him if maybe the money did play a role. Somebody reached out to me. They said, hey, I found Grim's business. He made $5 million last year. Is that true? And does that undermine what you said about it's not about the money?
Yeah, no, that is true. That's like what's one of the, I guess, the downsides with Norway is everything's public. If they know my company name, even just my name, they Google around, they find it. So like everything that I make is public. And yeah, you could say that the argument is obviously hypocritical because like I made a lot of money, but like I don't do it because I make a lot of money. I'd still do it if I didn't make a lot of money. And like, even if I wasn't paid, I would still do it when I had excess money to do it because I like doing it. And it might like sound like a lie, but that's how I started it. And that's how I always wanted to continue.
It sounds like the $5 million might have something to do with it. It just, but that's fine. I mean,
yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I 100% understand what people would think like, oh, no, it's only because of the money. But like, I know myself that it isn't only because of the money, but it's obviously great. Don't get me wrong.
How much did you make this year?
I'd rather not say, but I could say it's a lot.
Come on, Juicy, tell us. Tell us. Look,
so I actually don't know the exact answer myself, but I can tell you it's going to be right around Grim's number, which I know he told you already.
Grim's $5 million.
Yeah, and then I got to pay a stupid tax rate on that, but it's probably around there.
Both made about $5 million last year.
Jesus Christ.
So it's kind of obvious why they're not going to stop based on just a moral argument. And I began to wonder, like, how many of these influencers take these deals because they are so profitable? Well, luckily, thanks to the hard work of Jeff, who we mentioned earlier, whose documentary you should definitely go watch, I found out it's almost everyone.
This is the top 300 CSGO streamers since the beginning of this year, ranked by watch time. Of 300, 226 are currently sponsored by at least one of them. Some have up to 5. We are looking at 75%.
75%. It's insane. Counter-Strike Gambling is basically funding over half of the scene with these ridiculous paychecks. And I began to wonder, not about the people who said yes, but the people who said no. They're the minority. I wanted to know, for the people who said no, how much were they offered, and why didn't they take it?
This is something I think about a lot, because there have even been moments in time where I've been offered $300,000 for a month of gambling, $5,000 an hour. That could change my life. That could retire my mom. That could alter my family's lineage. But I keep turning it down. That was when I was an even smaller streamer than now.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
One of the things I've been thinking a lot about is like how to change this, you know, what does even change look like, right? That's part of what I'm thinking about. It's like, what does even change look like for this industry? And one thing that I came to is like, the incentives have to change.
Wäre ich so stabil, ich weiß es nicht. Also ich muss ganz ehrlich sagen, ich glaube, viele Leute von euch, wenn ich jetzt in die Community gucken würde, würde ich sagen, viele haben eine moralische Standhaftigkeit, aber ich würde mir gleichzeitig auch klar machen, für 99% der Leute hier würde so viel Geld ihr Leben verändern. Und ich meine nicht ihr Leben, weil sie sich jetzt endlich ein Lambo kaufen können, sondern weil sie Schulden haben, weil sie sich nicht richtig zu fressen leisten können, weil sie immer aufs Geld gucken, weil sie die Miete nicht, weil es immer eng wird mit der Miete. Und das ist aber ein gefährlicher Gedanke, weil der außer Acht lässt, dass das gar nicht der Fall ist. Niemand würde Menschen, die in so einer Lage sind, die in einem ganz normalen Kosmos mit Problemen von ganz normalen Leuten umherschwirren, sowas jemals anbieten. Denn es geht immer darum, dass das ja eine Transaktion ist für die unter Umständen lebensvernichtende Realität für andere Leute. Und jetzt kommt die Krux. Für die Leute, für die das dann so viel Geld bedeutet, die bewegen sich nicht mehr in diesem rationalen Rahmen, der gerade stattgefunden hat, den ich gerade verargumentiert habe. Meistens sind sie selbst in der Lage, schon gut für sich zu sorgen und für ihre Lebensstandards. Die machen das nicht mehr, weil sie das Geld unbedingt brauchen. Sie machen, weil sie das Geld unbedingt wollen. Aus Gier. Weil sie noch mehr wollen. Weil sie den Hals nicht voll kriegen können. Die sind an einem Punkt, an dem sie schon von ihrer Content-Creator-Situation leben können. Aber die wollen mehr. Also es ist ein bisschen irrtümlich zu sagen, würde das für Leute, die nichts haben, natürlich bedeuten, dass sie auf einmal ihr Leben umreißen können. Aber diese Angebote sind nicht für Leute, die nichts haben, sondern die Angebote sind für Leute, die schon was haben, die nur noch mehr wollen, weil sie den Hals nicht voll kriegen können.
They're so out of whack. The second you allow gambling sponsorships and streamers to like get sponsorship deals, how are you going to stop someone from taking that amount of money? You're a good person, so you just don't want to do it. That's your personal line. But I think it's hard for just even somebody who's a good person to say no. You know, it's only because you know what it would do to people. But that is such a crazy amount of money. You know, this interview almost ruined me on this story. I began to wonder if change was even possible when money like this is in the field for play. Like, the casinos aren't going to regulate themselves because they lose customers and there's so much money at stake. Most influencers aren't going to say no because there's so much money at stake and they could change their life and their families' lives by taking these deals. The more I looked into it, you can't expect all the people to be immune from this influence all at the same time, which is the only way to make change. It wasn't just the influencers or casinos either. Even esports, the most professional, supposedly, side of the game, was flooded with gambling. Almost every professional team had a gambling sponsor. For example, FaZe's Rollbit, the PGL Major was sponsored by 1xBet. G2 was sponsored by CSGO Roll. And this creates the same problem that it created with the influencers. If a sponsor is offering you buckets of money, it becomes really hard not to take, because if you don't take it, your competitor will. In fact, one esports owner argued the entire ecosystem in Counter-Strike, especially in the lower leagues, is basically funded by the gambling industry and gambling addicts.
Und jetzt wird's lustig. Richtige Firmen, also kredibile Firmen, die nicht irgendwie ein Auge zudrücken, weil es gibt Firmen, die ein Auge zudrücken bei sowas, die steigen dann in so einen Markt nicht mehr ein. Und jetzt wird's richtig eklig. Der Counter-Strike-Finanzierungsmarkt brauchte Geld, um zu wachsen. E-Sport-Vereine brauchten Geld, um die Gehälter zu bezahlen. Aber das Geld, was sie genommen haben, hat automatisch dafür gesorgt, dass sie nie wieder anderes Geld bekommen werden. Weil die Brandmauer gegenüber Glücksspiel von seriösen Unternehmen halt einfach zu hoch ist. Ich habe das mal erzählt, aber ich wiederhole das an dieser Stelle. Ich stand so kurz davor, ein Counter-Strike-Team zu haben. Wir hatten Gespräche, bei denen mir klar gesagt wurde, so und so viel kostet das, ja, nein. Ich stand so kurz, also legit this close. Kannst du nicht machen. Du kannst es nicht machen. Als wir uns das angeguckt haben und durchkalkuliert und mit Partnern gesprochen, mit Firmen, Bruder, du bist immer beim selben Ergebnis rausgekommen. Nämlich, dass du das nur finanzieren kannst, wenn du in diese Gambling-Scheiße reingehst. Du kannst das nicht finanzieren, außer du tauchst in diese Scheiße ab. Und du denkst dir so, Alter, aber du willst das schon, aber der E-Sport, das ist jetzt, und jetzt wird's problematisch, jetzt ist das so eine geschlossene Spirale. Jetzt ist es eine geschlossene Spirale. Alles, was diese Szene mit Geld versorgt, ist Glücksspiel. Und weil alles, was die Szene mit Geld versorgt, Glücksspiel ist, kommt nichts anderes, was out of this, also was so ein bisschen draußen ist und nicht die Augen zukneift und sagt, naja, wir machen es trotzdem, kommt nicht mehr dazu. Alter, und es ärgert mich bis heute, ne? Weil ich hätte schon gerne reingefickt, Alter, an der Stelle.
So I called him to understand more of how this works. Can you walk me through how gambling functions in the esports economy?
The issue is that, or the issue, I guess, at hand that you're talking about is that this activity is enabled by more controversial sponsors in gambling and skin rolling sites. If those sponsors weren't permitted, then the tier 2 and beyond scene in CS specifically would likely wither or die.
Genau, die würden nicht existieren.
Or at the very least constrict to a very large degree. So that's what I meant by my tweet that you should thank your local betting crackhead in Twitch chat. If you're a fan of tier 2 CS and beyond, then the reason you're watching that team play is probably because of that better. To note, this is also true of a lot of orgs' profitability. So the value that traditional sponsors bring in for a tier 2 org, even more, with G2 and Rollbit, for example, the value that a traditional sponsor brings in versus a Gamba sponsor is like 15 or 20% of the value.
Ja. 10% würde ich eher sagen. Krank. Es ist krank, was die für Geld schätzen. Also es ist echt krank. Da kann keiner mithalten.
So you don't really turn that down as an org owner unless you've got very specific moral qualms or disagree with gambling on a personal level.
But does this inflate the economy where if you're not taking a gambling sponsorship, you're almost at a disadvantage because your economics and what you're able to play players and attract talent is much less than somebody who, for example, has a gambling deal and is making way more money than you?
Yeah, to a degree, that's true, I think. Very, very few organizations are able to do it without Gamba. Largely, if you don't have Gamba, you're almost certainly going to be unprofitable.
You heard it there. You almost can't compete at the highest level without a gambling sponsor because they pay so much more than everyone else. And if everyone else is doing it, they will have more money to spend on a team than you and get better players and therefore likely beat you. There's just no more profitable sponsor to turn to. And so a lot of people actually take the money. So even if that sponsor is a site that allows minors to play with no ID, who cares? Just slap an 18+ sticker in your ad for them and get plausible deniability. That's what G2 did when announcing their CSGO Roll sponsorship. A depressing fact about this video is the star of it, a guy named Monesi, turned 18 only days before they announced the sponsorship, which means things in the video, it was filmed when he was 17. He was underage in their casino, supposedly 18 plus, and no one cared. A perfect metaphor for this entire industry. It's all optics. I have to tell you, by the way, the exact day I announced I was investigating Counter-Strike gambling, CSGO Roll did announce for the first time that they were going to be asking all users to prove that they're 18 before playing. Whether or not it's coincidence, they announced it same day. I don't know. Take it for what it is. Maybe it's a token gesture. They'll roll back. Or maybe it's a sudden change of heart for the youth. I don't know. Either way, the point I'm making is that for many people and professional teams, the choice to take a gambling sponsorship is like the choice for PEDs in the Olympics or steroids in the WWE. You can say no, but if everyone else is using them and getting ahead, you choosing not to for ethical reasons will get you left behind, and your peers will become more successful than you. It's a depressing cycle that has me flashing back to the CSGO Wild days several years ago and realizing we're right where we started. CSGO Wild in 2016 was a gambling website secretly owned, slightly disputed, by FaZe Clan. And according to FaZe Banks, his motivation to do that was pretty simple.
My motivation for doing it actually was at the time we weren't making enough money to buy a CSGO team. All in, the venture was going to cost us like $1 million, and we definitely did not have anything close to that. So my brain, we got to finesse it. We got to figure out how to make the money to buy this team now, because in the next 6 months, year, this team's going to be worth like $4 or $5 million, and we're not going to be able to get into this game, which in our heads we need to get in this game.
Yeah, when you hear it, it sounds crazy. It sounds like a cope. But his plan actually worked. FaZe got away with it. FaZe Clan has a Counter-Strike team that won second place in the infamous PGL Major all these years after CSGO Wild. It's alive and well, and still funded, by the way, by gambling, just by a different gambling website. Now it's Rollbit. It's reportedly a multi-million-dollar deal. Now look, I know seeing this is all very depressing, but we've actually learned some really valuable things. Firstly, we can't fix this.
War sehr depressiv, aber zum Glück kann ich gleich rein in die Twitch-Sub-Lootboxen, damit ich endlich das Valorant Big Win hole.
The individual level of influencers, esports teams, or even casinos. Doxing people, harassing them doesn't fix it or the underlying problems. It's a deep systemic problem of incentives. Of course, acknowledging that also doesn't absolve individuals. I wouldn't dare say it's okay for Juicy to do what he does, where people have been scammed and he continues to work with the same parent company. That said, if he stopped, it wouldn't change things suddenly. Someone would take his place. So if we're serious about trying to solve this problem, we have to look farther up the food chain than influencers, even than casinos, even than esports leagues.
Okay, Valve.
We have to zoom out and see the root cause.
Oh, let's go. Oh, let's go.
Definitely does have an underage gambling problem. They really don't have an incentive to stop it.
Underage, middle age, overage, however you want to slice it.
I think they have all the responsibility. I mean, you could pass me some of that if you want, but ultimately they're the kingpin.
Ja, das stimmt. Valve hat einfach mit den Lootboxen und diesem System haben einfach einen Money-Glitch. Die haben einfach unendlich Money.
Keeping in all of the money, or majority of the money, and there's a reason why they haven't killed it yet. They've possessed the power for all these years, but they allow it to go. And I feel like they do the bare minimum crackdown to allow it to keep operating.
Ja. Krasse Video, Digga. Wirklich, also das ist wirklich krass. Es ist immer noch, wir haben 2024, 2025 fast und es ist immer noch einfach ein Krebsgeschwür, ne?
Kommst du in meinen Stream, dann geh ich ehrenlos auf Mutter. Danke Mickey an der Stelle, ich geh ehrenlos auf Mutter.